My name is Deborah Conrad. My maiden name, Deborah Smith, and I'm the great-granddaughter of Alexander Winfield. Alex was born in Sussex County, Virginia. He was born in Sussex County. Documentation shows that he served in the Civil War as part of the Ohio Color Troops. He was very specific about his service. He served for 2 years and 11 days. He went in 1863. He mustered out in 1865. He went back to Ohio, and as a result of how valiantly black soldiers had fought during the Civil War, Lincoln opened up the doors for them for regular service. So in Ohio, in Chillicothe, he enlisted in 1867 in the regular army. And at that time, he became part of the 41st Infantry, which later consolidated into the 24th. Alex lived in Ohio. When he mustered out of the service, he went to San Antonio. He spent time in San Antonio. He spent time in Austin. And somewhere along the way, he met Roseanne Booker, who was my great-grandmother. He met Rose right after the service. And he got out of the service and settled in Fayette County in LaGrange. And if you look at what he did in Fayette County, every single year from the time he mustered out in 1870 until the time he left Fayette, he improved. He had a horse when he first got out. The next tax year shows he had a horse and a buggy. He bought another horse. He bought cattle. He bought hogs. He was prosperous, but he didn't commit to buying land yet. So all along, from 1870 until 1902, he lived in LaGrange. He raised his family, he raised his children. Rose had 10 children, one of which was my grandmother, Minnie. And the story, the oral history says that he began to have problems in LaGrange because of his wife, which makes sense. 1900 to 1902, things were pretty turbulent for black folks all over the country, but Texas was especially tough. So in 1902, he picked up his family and he moved to Lake City. Now, all along the way, he probably worked cattle, and he got out of the army. He could handle a gun, he could handle a horse, so it made sense that he would probably run cattle. He got to Lake City in 1902, and I still have a question mark as to what drew him here. My guess is because there was already a settlement here in Texas City of black cowboys. But that was Texas City. That wasn't Lake City. And he did have a connection with the Butler family. There's some documentation that there was a friendship there was a relationship. So, you settle in Lake City, and to really take root, what do? You buy land. He bought land. He bought it in 1902. He bought, my records say it was about 40 acres or more. He paid for it on time, $750 at 8% interest, and he never missed a payment. Never. So, by 1910, he owned the land, and in that time, in 1906, he also contributed to the founding of the Methodist Church in Lake City. And there was a Winfield Chapel at the time. It later consolidated into, here it is, Dickinson thanks to the efforts of Alicia Galloway, she got Hopkins Park in Dickinson to actually recognize Alex, his contribution to the community. But this is Dickinson, still not Lake City. He made his footprint in Lake City. And by the time he got to Lake City, his children were grown up, pretty much. And they contributed to the workforce and the population here in Lake City. I would suffice to say there are very few people in this city who are native who haven't had some interaction with a Winfield descendant in some way, shape, or form. We have to look at history in terms of what's going on. So this man bought land, he served his country, he raised his family, and things were not, it wasn't the most welcoming environment for people of color. It speaks much to his character, in my opinion, that he was able to do this, and he still did it with his head held high. The story is an oral history, a story that was told to me by Kenneth Williams, a cousin. Talks about how he sat on his porch with his dog, and someone had bitten some dog had bitten somebody. And the sheriff approached him to ask him about it and said, "I need to take your dog." And Alex said, in a nice big voice, "Sheriff, my dog is sat right here with me. My dog didn't bite anybody." And the sheriff challenged him again. And he said no. And the third time, he kind of touched his rifle. He said, "Sheriff, my dog's not going anywhere." And the sheriff said, "Okay, Alex, you keep the dog on the porch." He backed off. That kind of attitude was just not something people of color did at that time. And my guess is that even though he had the respect of the powers that be, they didn't necessarily want to recognize him because the land that he purchased, the old-timers will tell you, it was called the Winfield Settlement. And it was a lot more than what the family now has. I grew to have profound respect for him, and when I sent for his pension file, I realized why. I'd like to read to you in his own words, because he applied for his pension in 1910. He passed away in 1915. One of the local doctors here treated him for the ailment that he applied to the Army for his pension. Dr. Dallas. Anybody who is a Lake City resident, one of the old residents, knows that name. And it's in his pension file. It's documented. Alex had a fruitful life. The names I'm about to read are the children, the offspring of Alexander Winfield. The oldest child was Burton Winfield. He was born in 1872. The next child was Alex Winfield Jr., born in 1874. Sarah Winfield, born in 1876, who, by the way, Aunt Sarah was a midwife. And I'm told that she delivered practically all of her baby sister, who was my grandmother's children, except for one, Aunt Clara. Aunt Clara was the first child born in the hospital. But she couldn't have delivered all of them, but most of them she did. There was Uncle Johnny. Uncle Johnny was born in 1878. There was William, born in 1880. His nickname was Uncut. And he played a guitar. And he lost his sight somewhere along the way. I'm not sure when. There was Uncle Henry, who was born in 1882, who was dashingly handsome. I should have brought his picture. He's gorgeous. There was Aunt Lily. Now, Aunt Lily has an interesting story. Aunt Lily was married to Obadiah Hobbs. And that is who Hobbs Road is actually named after. So the reason why you hear the Hobbs family is because that the street was named after him. But in fact, Alex was first because he married Alex's daughter, Aunt Lily. Then there's a set of twins. My grandmother, Minnie, and her twin was Amzai. And Amzai, by the way, and I just recently found this, served in World War I and he came out as a corporal. He actually got I think they call it a Bronze Star of Victory or something, but he was a corporal in World War I. And the baby was Alma. And Alma is the little girl that is on the picture with Alex and Rose. The woman in the back, the young woman, that is Minnie. That's my grandma. So now, how it came about, Uncle Obie was a wonderful man, I'm told. He passed in 1915. I just was looking at his obituary today. But I think at the time, it was a difficult time for African Americans. And people who tended to be a little bit more subservient were sometimes given more credit. And I think that could have been the reason why with Uncle Obie. Alex was a bit more confrontational, and that wasn't always rewarded in the larger community. So my guess is that's probably the reason why it ended up being Hobbs Road, but called Winfield 7. But they all were in line. But I have to say that the land that's there is a small portion of the land that Alex actually owned. Alex Winfield owned over 40 acres. There's a reason why Magnolia Cemetery has my whole family pretty much there, and that he had, at that time, a carved headstone. You just didn't get that if you didn't have some type of notoriety, if you weren't considered a someone. Because there are people there now, some of which my own grandparents, that don't necessarily have a headstone, but he had one. He died in 1915, so that said something. And he left a will. So he fought for his country. He paid his taxes. He bought land. He helped populate Lake City. Really. And he had a will. He transferred assets. These are things that society rewards. But you have to say it in terms of what the overall context is. None of these things are easy for anyone of any color, but for a man of color, it's a little harder, I would say. I started this research after my mother passed away. It's almost as if I needed a connection to something, to what she grew up with, and to the stories that I had heard. So I've been doing this since 2001. She passed on August 23rd. And I actually made a presentation to the Lake City County Historical Society, and I have a wonderful little letter that they gave me. They were very appreciative of the work. But when I went to the Historical Society's website, the only person of color I saw was Jack Johnson. And he's not even from Lake City. Jack Johnson is from Galveston. This is why I think Alex, and this is why I think that the Winfield legacy is important. There are very few people that haven't either worked with someone from this family. And people from this family have done great things. We have people in the NFL. We have seamstresses, we have independent business people, we have real estate investors. Winfield means something. Dickinson has honored him. Fayette County has recognized him. I think it's time. I think it's time. Alexander Winfield is important to Lake City because he contributed. He founded, along with others, a church here that the African American community frequented. Many of my family members were buried out of that same Winfield Chapel before it consolidated with the other Methodist church. He provided in and out of the way. He provided a workforce for people in this city. And he was a man of character. he didn't, how would one say, he didn't necessarily cater to the powers that be at a level of someone who wasn't an equal. He had connections with G.W. Butler. I believe that his experience as far as running cattle also had a connection there. And there are many members of our family that still had connections with the Butler family and the Hall family right here in Lick City. It is time for Lick City to embrace him. I would think that any community would want to embrace someone with this kind of character that has served his country honorably. And I think that's the reason why, and I think Lick City would do itself proud to embrace the legacy of Alexander Winfield. Something in particular that caught my attention, though, out of his pension file. And these are his words. I'd like to read them. Alex applied for his pension in 1910, and he applied for 5 years. He died in 1915, and he never got his pension. But I want to read this, and I have to say I've had to read this at least 15 or 20 times because I always tear up when I read it. These are his words as to why he had no proof that he had problems. That the reason that I am unable to give my regimental surgeon certificate is because he never treated me. At first, my disability was not so severe, but that I could wear it out being then young and otherwise healthy. This was only about 4 months before my discharge, and after that I had no chance again. So many went before the doctor on small ailments in order to escape duty that it was considered a disgrace among the best soldiers to go to the doctor for treatment. If I had known then that in after years my troubles would have increased and that a hospital record or doctor's certificate of treatment would absolutely be necessary to secure my rights, I should certainly not have been so willing to do my duty so faithfully under painful circumstances. The best soldiers. That's why.